Good morning, everyone. I'm Corby Kummer, Executive Director of Food and Society at the Aspen Institute. We're proud and pleased to be bringing you our conversation on food justice from the 2024 Summer Nutrition Summit. We're so grateful to longtime partners at Share Our Strength. Chuck Schofield, Executive Vice President of Share Our Strength, oversees all of the organization's programmatic work, and he'll be moderating. Natalie Rachelson will be fielding questions both in our room and on our live webinar feed. Thank you to the Share Our Strength team, including Natalie, Julie McNulty, and my colleague Mary Castillo, who brought together a wonderful group to discuss food justice and philanthropy. With unprecedented focus on social change and more dollars floating into philanthropy than ever before, there are extraordinary opportunities to create lasting solutions to some of the world's most pressing challenges. And yet, despite dramatic advances in the scale and sophistication of philanthropy, many of society's biggest problems, climate change, poverty, food insecurity, have persisted, or in some cases gotten worse. In this conversation, we'll explore what philanthropy gets right and wrong when it comes to addressing hunger and poverty, how the public, private, and philanthropic sectors can work together to achieve results, and how we can think differently about philanthropy to build more equitable and sustainable food systems for all. This session is being recorded, and we'll distribute the recording as soon as it's posted at aspenfood.org. I'm proud to introduce our moderator, Chuck Schofield. Thank you all for joining us today.
So welcome to these three amazing panelists, and we're going to dive right in. I'm going to start with just asking each of you, Cesare, I'm going to start with you actually, and asking, but each of you this question of telling us a little bit about your work that you do in this field, and what inspires you to focus on hunger and poverty as part of your work.
Thanks so much, Chuck. I appreciate so much being here with all of you. Oh gosh. Well, first I'll just start with what inspires me to be here. I love people and community. I love culture. I believe that nourishing food is the heart of building connections, connects us to one another, to our heritage, to the understanding that we're stewards of this magical earth. Fighting hunger and poverty is really about protecting the earth and advocating for our sovereignty as human beings. And for me, growing up in a frontline community that really sat at the nexus of systemic vulnerabilities, agriculture, corporate food, healthcare disparities, oil dependencies, these sort of overlapping challenges really deeply shaped my life experiences and have, become the driving force behind this work, this motivation to focus on, solutions that are rooted in equity and justice and pathways for people to heal with the earth. That's really the formative part of my journey and sort of the inspiration and why I show up every day for this work.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing. Christina, can you share a little bit about what led you to work in the field that you're working in?
Sure. And I really echo a lot of what Cesare said, particularly around like food and our connection to culture and community. I think just a little bit my own personal anecdote around my journey in this work. I was born with cerebral palsy, and that is something that does not have a cure. And, I was in physical therapy since I was 2 years old, and it's something that I'm going to continue to deal with for the rest of my life. And I think that we're not a cerebral palsy conference, so why am I bringing this up? I think that when I started my journey in public health, one of the things that really struck me about health promotion and disease prevention is something that we've heard all week, which is hunger is solvable. So for me, there's no cure for cerebral palsy. There's only ways that you can treat things, the ways you can make things better, but you can't, there's no way in my lifetime, I'm not going to stop having cerebral palsy, but we know that we can change food security for kids. And so I think that's something that really called me into the work, because I don't want kids to their health be determined by their zip code, by social determinants of health. And that's something that still really drives my work.
So appreciate you sharing that. Thank you.
That is so commendable. I just love those parts of it because I know it comes from the heart. Because for me, I don't have an underlying condition that makes me love this work, but I have an underlying past. And so from my past, being one of those kids that did not have a lot of access to food security is why I do the work, because I understand what they go through and I understand where they come from. Growing up, we didn't have a lot of money. You know what I'm saying? And so, you know, when I look back on that, you know what I'm saying, and the things that I did not have, even though my grandmother, she raised me and she was always the kind of person that shared what we did have, it just made me have a love and a passion to be able to reach back and to be able to help those kids and to be able to show them and to give them something that would, you know, be lasting for them and to create avenues and open doors for them that gave them hope that there are sustainable resources and that life doesn't have to be what you were born into. It's always what you make it. So that's why I do what I do. That's my inspiration.
Thank you. You're inspiring me. Thank you. I do just want to remind everybody what Corby said there. You can post questions into the chat if you are watching this via Zoom, and here in the room, we'll have questions as well around 12 o'clock. So just a reminder about that. Cesare, I'm going to come back to you and ask, in your current role, if you could tell us just a little bit more about how you're making a meaningful impact on issues like hunger and poverty, and if you want to add anything around unique perspectives or approaches that your organization's bringing to create solutions around these issues.
Sure. Thanks so much for that, Chuck. One of the reasons I joined the organization Sustainable Ag and Food System Funders, more than a mouthful, is because of the focus on a systems level approach. So, you know, we really work with, and our work is focused on funders. So we have over 100 different funders from across the integrated capital stack that are members of our 501c3. We really work to integrate and center racial equity and social justice and emphasize solutions that are coming from the community. So our work is really about building collaboration across resource mobilization. So that's capital, that's relationships, that's, you know, all the small C pieces to mobilize folks, really mobilize folks towards making sustainable long-term commitments to community. We are focused on building trust and partnership over the long term to really lean in and help funders understand how to support smallholder farms, farm workers, BIPOC-led organizations, you know, really the folks who are on the front lines leading this work for food justice and shifting us towards food sovereignty. So, you know, we're really focused on connecting, guiding, and mobilizing funders towards systemic transformation so that we can foster more resilient and democratic and just food systems. And I'd say the big piece, I think the unique piece for us is just being able to look for and fill the gaps. We recognize that a lot of the work for justice is emergent, and being positioned to respond to emergence, what comes up inherently when we try to find new solutions, and how can we hold that space so that there's an ability to focus on these really tough challenges that communities face. That's a big part of what we're working to do, is just bring folks together and continue focusing on the big system and holding the complexity of that.
It's incredibly powerful. Thank you. Christina, how about you at Newman's Own? Tell us a little bit more about y'all's approach to the work.
Well, I really appreciate that I get to follow Cesare because he set me up so perfectly for a lot of the similar values that we share. And actually, Mel and I had a chance to connect at dinner last night. So it's nice to connect with folks that have similar visions around what it means to be funding systems of change and thinking about food and nutrition as it sits in the wider space. And so I guess first I'll just say about Newman's Own Foundation. So some may be familiar with the brand, but Newman's Own is a food brand that gives 100% of the profits to the foundation. So we have a unique model in that way. I think that is one of the unique value propositions of Newman's Own. And we share that on the packaging with our consumers. We have 100% of profit to help kids, tagline, and we have stories on the back of packaging to share those stories. And so I think that's kind of from the business model, that's the unique lens. And then from the programmatic work, our mission is to nourish and transform the lives of children who face adversity. And we do that through 3 programmatic pillars. One programmatic pillar is joyful experiences for children with serious illness. Those are related to the camps that Paul Newman founded for children with conditions like cancers and blood disorders. The other 2 pillars are related to the work we're discussing here today, the food and nutrition security. We have a pillar around nutrition education and school food, and Indigenous food justice. And we've talked a lot about obviously school food and in this conference, wanted to just share a little more about our Indigenous food justice portfolio. Less than 0.5% of philanthropic funding goes to Indigenous communities. I'm just going to repeat that just for emphasis. Less than 0.5% of philanthropic funding goes towards Indigenous communities. And so that's something that we are working to change, and that we are really proud to be working with grantee partners on Indigenous food justice for youth. And we're also really interested in talking with other funders who are in this space. So if you're interested in chatting about that, please come find me afterwards.
Thank you. I'm very interested to talk about that more. So yes, please. Mel, can you tell us a little bit more about the Josh Howard Foundation's work and getting into some of the details for us?
Yes. So when most people think of Josh Howard, I don't know if you guys know who Josh Howard is, but Josh is an ex-NBA player. He was drafted to the Dallas Mavericks, and he played for the Mavericks and a few other NBA teams. And so initially the foundation was set up to provide basketball camps and different things like that, summer activities to youth. And so when I became the program director of the foundation, I began working to create a space for the foundation where we could have after school and summer meals, so that we could not only educate families and kids through sports, but we could also educate them and provide healthy meals and snacks for them. Because I feel like, it's just as important to get them active as it is to teach them, the important parts of the other side that mirrors the activity that you need to do every day to lead a healthy and balanced life. And so we started doing CACFP and SFSP programs all over the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, which I absolutely love. I do go into our sites. We partner with rec centers. We partner with YMCAs. We partner with the schools. We partner with apartment complexes. And all of our partnerships, for the most part, are in low income, low access areas where we know that there is a strong need for food, and there's a strong need for them to be able to understand or learn how they can still get healthy foods every day, even if sometimes they don't have the funding and different things like that to have access to those things on their own. And so we go into these communities and we partner with them. They give us our apartment complex, either give us an apartment home that they've built out for us in their apartments, or they give us their community center, and it's solely restricted just for us every day during the times of our program for after school or summer meals. And so we're able to go in there and do educational enrichment activities. We're able to provide healthy and balanced meals, help the kids with tutoring, with their homework. So there's so many things that come with what we do every day. And so my staff, they go in and they're just there to be accessible to those kids every day after school and in the summer to provide whatever it is that they need so that we can help them grow into where they're trying to go. And so that's what we do every day. And not only do we do it in Dallas, we also have after school in North Carolina, which is where he's from. We do it there, and we're currently branching out to Houston. And I just got a call last week about Wichita Falls. So when I say I love what I do, I absolutely love it. There's nothing I enjoy more. With all the things that I've done, there's nothing I enjoy more than helping the kids, because I feel like there's so much stigma around not having that I want to show them that it's okay not to have. If you get caught in the not have or the embarrassment of what you don't have, then we can't get you to a sufficient place so that you can have what you need. So that's why we do what we do.
It's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing. Each of you touched on this a little bit, but I want to dig a little bit deeper on personal motivations, and then we're going to shift to talk about opportunities and challenges within the sector. And Cesare, coming to you, was there a particular moment or experience that shaped your passion for addressing social inequities? And then another piece of the question is, how do you stay motivated to continue to do this work and tackling these challenges?
Thanks for that, Chuck. I appreciate the opportunity to talk more about the personal part. And appreciate Christina and Mel sharing some of their experiences as well. I mean, I grew up in a frontline community, so I like to just say I was born into this work. I also experienced at a pretty young age struggling with poor health, depression, the traumatic loss of many loved ones due to the things we all know that are caused by this system: cancer, addiction, disease. And that has continued. And for me, it was actually starting to work on the Potawatomi Reservation when I was a teenager, cooking Native Indigenous foods with my mentor, Loretta Barrett Odin. Shout out to her. She's up in Oklahoma doing great work there, and has been, and is in her 80s and out there still cooking. But meeting her changed my life because I was able to really connect the dots to what I was experiencing, what I was feeling in my heart, what I intuitively knew was wrong. And if anybody, you're in Dallas, and I grew up in rural Oklahoma in the 80s and 90s. So the consolidation that was happening there at that time was just absolutely devastating. And, I also grew up as a queer, multiracial person in a community where queer and BIPOC people face incredible discrimination, invisibility, exclusion, and, these systems that are really set up to serve just a few. So I would say my childhood, was hugely impactful for me. That was really it. And then to still see over these last 20 years, all of my family's still, in Oklahoma. I'm very connected to work there. I work there actively, though I live in Northern California. These diet-related diseases, hunger, the disproportionate impact on our marginalized relations persists. So that's very motivating to me. It's very motivating to me to stay committed and take this one day at a time, to hold a real vision for change in my heart, to understand that I can't workaholism my way out of this and have to take care of myself. So I stay really motivated by honestly leaning into connection with the land, my community, spiritual practices, and staying connected to the work and to the people that I love. It's really incredible when you are connected to the front lines of folks working for collective action and collective liberation, and can embrace tangible progress, these small parts that help us be in relationship together. So that keeps me optimistic. It's just being in a relationship with people and staying focused on what truly we're trying to solve here together, which is pain that we all feel. So thanks for asking that.
Thank you for answering. That's so powerfully put, and just deeply appreciate you sharing with all of us. Christina, again, same question, just a little bit deeper into your story, as well as what keeps you motivated.
Yeah, so I think that what keeps me motivated, I mean, again, echo a lot of the same themes that Cesare brought up, particularly around being in community with folks. And so in my current role, one of the things I really am constantly motivated by are grantee partners. It's one of the exciting things about working at a foundation is we just have amazing grantee partners doing this great work all the way from national level to community-based nonprofits. And so to see that work happening across the ecosystem, because we know there is no silver bullet for this issue, we really do need people working across. Anybody else went to public health grad school, the social ecological model. We need people working across different systems in order to tackle these issues. And so that's one of the things that really motivates me. I think as I think about my own career and experience, I had the opportunity a number of times in my career to work on the front lines managing food access programs at farmers markets. And that's something to be seeing the impact that benefits delivery, that access point has with people is something that I still think back to today. And also I should shout out Share Our Strength. Some may know in my early career, I worked at Share Our Strength, and that's really where I cut my teeth in terms of learning how nutrition programs can serve families and serve children to alleviate food insecurity. And so I think being able to draw on all of those experiences from like the national level work that I did at Share Strength, the National WIC Association, to literally drying out farmers market checks from WIC participants after it had rained. Like I've done it all. Like I've done the briefs on Capitol Hill and I've done drying out WIC farmers market checks. And so it's kind of thinking about that as a collective. That's what we need to move the work forward.
Love it. Mel, how about you? Is there a particular moment or experience that you would want to share that, and also anything that motivates and sustains your optimism?
I think what motivates me most, as these ladies have said, just the connection with community. But for me, it's the kids.
Yeah.
I see the work and I know it works because I'm doing it every day. I see the difference that it makes because I'm in the middle of it every day, because I go to my sites, I interact with the kids. I have kids that started out, they were 7 and 8 years old in the program, and now they're like high school graduates and they're in college, and they come back and sometimes they'll see me at different centers and they're like, they call me Miss MJ, and they're like, Miss MJ, can I help you with the groceries? Or, different things like that. And I feel like because they know I love it, then it made them enjoy it more. Even when I'm not there, they know I love it. And they know, and not only do the kids know I love it, the community partners that we have, they know I love it because I show up and because I get involved. And so that makes a difference when it comes to dealing with our staff every day. It makes a difference when it comes to dealing with the families in their communities, because we care so much about the families in their communities. I feel like it shifts and it shapes how they treat and how they respond to the families in their communities, because we get so involved with what we do for them. And so I think that that's what keeps me motivated every day, is that seeing the results of what we do and knowing that it actually really does work. If you work it and you really get committed to it and you really, follow and advocate for the policies and the improvements in these communities, it really does work.
Well said. The commitment of all three of you is clearly contagious, and so appreciate all that you've shared. We're going to pivot now to really talk about opportunities and some of the challenges that we face within philanthropy and food justice. So Cesare, what opportunities do you see for philanthropy to create transformative and lasting solutions? And if you want to even showcase collaborations in any form or fashion, but what do you see that's driving the opportunities?
Sure. Thanks for that. I think the biggest thing right now is the shift from focusing on food security to food sovereignty. Really like stepping back and looking at that, the food system is one of the most potent weapons to any movement working for transformational change. And that, liberation and not just feeding people is the ultimate goal of food system funding. And so, really, I think shifting funding priorities towards food sovereignty and justice, so that funders are really and this is happening, right? This is really happening. You hear Mel and Christina talking about it, but addressing root causes of inequity, and really looking at these, building long-term relationships to fund these folks on the front lines. And the other opportunities I would say for philanthropy to really look at getting involved more in opportunities like influencing zoning, engaging policies for reparative land return, looking at the heirs property reform, transformational funding that is looking at the root cause of inequity, and being bold, being collaborative, being community driven. This is all the type of work to really prioritize sovereignty and justice. And I think, there's a number of groups and organizations that I'll bring up and kind of speak to throughout the conversation. But I thought, just pointing a little bit to locally there's the Dallas Food Justice Coalition. And I think that's a great example of a group. And Mel's going to be able to speak more locally to groups there, but the types of local groups that just kind of come together and are able to respond. How can you be in a position to listen to what those folks need and create a relationship so that you can be funding the now and be on tap for what kind of funding and support is needed to continue unlocking opportunities.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Cesare. Christina, what do you think in terms of where the greatest opportunities are? And if you want to highlight any collaborations, that's great too.
Sure. Yeah. And I think just to build on what Chesray was saying, I think first, just from a conceptual level, when we are saying things like food justice and, food sovereignty, I think, because obviously we've been talking a lot about food security at this conference as well. And I think that, in my mind, the food security is a necessary but not sufficient measure of food justice. So yes, we need food security in order to achieve food justice, but we also need these other things that Chesray highlighted: access to culturally relevant food, being able to, for indigenous communities to have food sovereignty and sovereignty over their lands. And food justice is really moving it towards a positive and rights-based paradigm that food is to be celebrated and enjoyed. And so really thinking about that through that lens, that we need, that those are where we want to go. That's the gold standard, is that food justice. And I think in terms of, I got so excited talking about that, I lost my train of thought. Philanthropy, right, yes. I think one of the opportunities in philanthropy is really, we heard yesterday, for those of us that are here in Dallas, we heard yesterday from Tianka for the Families and Workers Fund around pooling resources. And I think that's something that I just want to call my other philanthropy colleagues into conversation around that, because I think there's a lot more we can do around pooling, not just funds, but our resources and our connections to drive our grantee partners' work. So again, would love to chat with folks that are interested in collaborative funding models. And I think also, Chesray also said, funding what is needed. I think that's something that's changing in philanthropy, but we still have work to go, room to grow. One of the things I'm really proud of with Newman's own foundation is we do really, we have a flexible funding model. So we are funding grantee partners for the cost that they need, not the cost that we think that they need. And that's something that kind of gets into the dynamic of power sharing among philanthropy. And we're making progress, but as a field, we still have a long way to go in terms of how we're power sharing and how we're willing to listen to grantee partners about what they need, not what we want them to do.
That's good.
Right. So appreciate you getting into the definitions of food sovereignty and explaining more about that with relation to food security. Mel, how about you? What opportunities do you see, and anything in the field of collaboration as well? And after Mel's answer, we're going to open it up to questions in just a sec.
So to piggyback off of what Chesray and Christina said, for me, one of the biggest things is definitely partnerships. I have sat on the leadership councils for CACFP and SFSP with TDA, and with with United Way here in Dallas, and the North Texas Food Bank, also with the Baylor Hunger Initiative for the Summer and Supper Leadership Council. And so having that network of people, it really keeps you plugged into where some of the bigger initiative needs to take place, where the need is bigger in some of the areas, because you can't work every area. And so you have to be connected to other community partners, other groups that can help you know what areas need to be targeted, especially like for us, branching out to Houston, well, being connected to those partners, they're helping me figure out, No Kid Hungry even, helping me figure out what areas are where the need is the greatest, because there are certain areas that are already being tapped into. Well, I don't want to saturate areas that are already being taken care of. I want to tap into some of the areas that are being left behind. And so I really feel like partnership is the biggest part of philanthropy. Outside of that, education and job training for the people in the communities, that helps with our philanthropic efforts. To be able to educate them so that they understand. I recently got the opportunity to start working, being a consultant, and in the North Texas area for Strength. And so I love that work so much, because what it's done is it allowed me not to only be an executive director of a community program that provides the meals, it also allowed me to go back as a community partner and to be able to see what is needed in those communities to drive, like the parents, and what's the focus, and to drive the sponsors and the donors and different things like that that are active in those communities. And so I was able to go and participate and put together focus groups and bring the people from the communities together to see what the needs are, because we want to hear from the people. It's easy for me to go in and provide you something, but what if I'm providing is not what you need? Then if I'm if what I'm providing is not what you need, then it's not helping your community. And so I like to be able to go back and hear from the people in the community so that they can help me drive my initiative. Tell me what you need so that I can be on the front lines of speaking up and advocating for what you need in your community. That's how I feel we best serve them in those communities.
And can I just also just
Please, go ahead.
plus one what Mel said? I think I heard recently in conversation with in philanthropy, this question of if you can't answer the question, who asked me to do this or who asked me to be here? You got some work to do. And I think that's one of the things that I keep coming back to in our work is like, why, what are we, where's our why? Who is asking us to provide XYZ opportunity? And that's true whether you're on the funder side or you're on the program side in terms of what kind of opportunities we are creating for communities.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to open it up to anybody have a question in the room before we go to the chat? And if there are any questions on the chat that we need to, I've got more questions, which I'd be happy to ask. Ben, please.
We can repeat it. We can repeat it.
So, you know, I've faced this with some new partnerships that we're trying out to at the local level. And so the discussions around working with community-based approaches, smaller nonprofits as a part of these broader system change efforts to really, bless you, get down into.
Here comes a microphone. Sorry, if you want to
perfect.
hear it right beside you.
Nope.
Not on.
Hello. Hot mic.
Yeah. So just trying to nail down into what I'm uncovering as some distrust out there from local community-based efforts. And I've kind of like heard it undergirding some of what the three of you have discussed. You know, I work for a major food company. Other folks work for, you know, different types of funders, and there's varying levels of distrust from the community that, you know, we're coming in trying to be honest and engage in an appropriate fashion, but they've been burned before by other organizations that have come in and come out. You know, just what have you seen in, you know, your approaches to building up these local coalitions, working with other local funders or national funders to build out this trust, engage with the community in an honest way, so that you have better outcomes? Because for me, I mean, I spent 6 months trying to build this trust with a local organization in Chicago, no fault of their own. They've been burned before. So just trying to feel this out and what you're seeing as the best approaches to this at scale or in just some small nuggets.
Chesseray, do you want to start?
Sure, I'd love that. And I'm so happy that you're asking that question. I think, and Mel is, you know, leading the example in the room here. But, you know, one thing I think is just, yeah, trust building is, we say relationships are wealth. And obviously trust is essential. And, you know, I think there's a real opportunity for philanthropy, for industry to look at some frameworks for accountability. Like, how are we being accountable to community? How are we inviting, you know, whether grantees or community-based orgs, movement leaders, into the conversation, to have transparent conversations about the power sharing, about the imbalance, to actually hear from people what their experiences have been. We've seen, you know, philanthropic organizations creating actual community-based like governance boards, you know, and it really starts with like an openness, and I think the resourcing to have the resourcing and the willingness to have these direct conversations about how people have been burned, what's the harm that's been caused, and then like a real desire to actually build authentic trust-based relationships from there. And I think coming from the place of listening, really coming from the place of listening, and again, with a framework for accountability, like understanding what folks on the front lines are facing and dealing with, and doing that work ourselves, not asking them to inform us about, you know, what they're facing, doing the work, coming to the table, and working with others around us that have to create, I would say, a shared approach so that community isn't just continuously asked, that we can say, hey, here's a single container we've come together to hold for our community. We are all stakeholders in this, and then we want to listen and hear. We've seen that be really successful. And I think just to say it's ongoing, this relationship building and the trust building, it doesn't stop. It is a constant, it has to constantly be tended to. And that's, why an accountability framework can be helpful, I think, because it allows us to kind of have an ongoing conversation of checks and balances to start addressing where this harm has happened, these power imbalances and these inequities that have been in place for a long time.
Mel or Christine, anything you want to build on that?
Yeah, I mean, again, I would echo a lot of what Cesare said, and particularly about like trust takes time and building relationships. And I'll put my monitoring, evaluation, and learning hat on for a minute just to springboard off of Cesare, your comments around listening. So one of I've been at Newman's Own Foundation just over a year now, and one of the first things I did when I started at Newman's Own Foundation was to host listening sessions with our grantees, our grantee partners, for just to have that conversation. And I'm particularly talking about like our application process and evaluation. So to hear from them, because I think that's one of the things when we think about the trust building and like how much we are asking grantee partners to report and why, and what we are doing with that data that we're collecting. And so that's one of the things that we just had conversations around it, and what they wanted, what had worked, not just with Newman's Own Foundation, but other funders, and what we could learn from them. And so we incorporated their feedback into our application process, and the grantee partners, our existing grantee partners, got to give feedback on the application process for the next cycle. And then we also used a platform called Just Fund, which I don't know if anybody is familiar with, but it's sort of the common application of funders to, the goal is to streamline applications. So once you fill out the common application, then each funder just adds on a couple of questions specific to that. So trying in this effort of power sharing and democratizing grant making to really be talking with grantee partners throughout the process, from before the application starts to when, the ongoing, and like when that grant period finishes.
Excellent.
And just to jump in on that, what I learned, because like I said, I recently had the opportunity to go into the communities and do focus groups. And so the last one that I just did, I had to have about 15 people per group, and I had to host 3 groups. And I don't know if you guys have ever tried to put together focus groups, but you're like, are these people going to come? Are they going to show up? I don't want to be
nothing more nerve wracking. Like 10 minutes before a focus group, you're just like white knuckling it. You're like, where are people?
But what moves my heartstrings is that I had an overwhelming response from every community that I went into to work these focus groups. And every focus group that I did was sold out. I mean, now, didn't hurt it that we gave them an incentive. That's always good. However, what it did was it gave them an opportunity to feel like they were heard. What I have to say, how I feel, and my opinion matters. And so I think that that's how you build trust within the community. I think that that's how you combat some of the uneasiness, is making people feel like what I have to say matter. Because when you think about it, when you're going into these communities where there's low income, you know what I'm saying? A lot of these people, they didn't there's financial literacy issues, there's communication issues, there's educational, barriers and different things like that. Life has handed them such a bad run a lot of times, so they feel that it's like, how can I trust that you're really coming in and you really care about where I go next? You know what I'm saying? And so I feel like what has always shown them, whether I'm doing Josh Howard Foundation or whether I was doing the consulting work, it showed them that I cared and that I was honest and open, and that I really wanted to move things along for them because I listened to them. This isn't about me. This is about you. And so I think that that's what's been the most helpful for me. And from what I've seen, is that's how we get people to trust, is listening and making them feel like you value my opinion. You know what I'm saying? Versus coming in trying to push your theories on me. Yeah.
Wait, sounds like we've got a question from the chat. Natalie?
We have an online question. What are foundations looking for when thinking through multi-year funding strategies for community-based food projects, especially in reference to the incoming federal administration?
Desiree, do you wanna start that one?
She's like, I don't know.
You want to read it one
Well,
more time,
yeah,
Natalie?
can you-
I just find it again. What are foundations looking for when thinking through multi-year funding strategies for community-based food projects?
So can I take in my opinion, I think they're looking for storytelling. How do we best tell our story to get us to the level and to the place that we projected or we foresee going? I mean, that's just kind of what I feel. I mean, I also do consulting with nonprofits, helping them structure, start, revamp their nonprofits and different things like that for 501c3 organizations that have been longstanding or that are just starting out. And so I think that that is one of the barriers. I think that that's what a lot of foundations are looking for, is storytelling. How do we tell about our efforts in order to move the chain along? So that would be my answer to that question.
Yeah, I think just to build on that, because I agree with what you said, I think, it's a tricky question because it depends on the funder, it depends on the foundation. I'm assuming this question is coming from like a prospective applicant, in which case I would say, kind of looking at the foundation's mission area and what hopefully the foundation will share, like organizations they funded, other grantees of theirs, just to see what they're funding in that ecosystem. And one of the things at Newman's Own Foundation we've tried to be very transparent about are our criteria and how we evaluate applications. And so I think just really trying to utilize that when you're thinking through what you are applying for. I think in addition to that, just looking at, from the funder perspective, looking at like what the project or organization's view is for their growth over years and how they see their growth building on whether that's something they did previously or they're trying to grow into a new portfolio is important.
Thanks for that. I think in one piece I would just add is I think foundations are really starting to look at, grassroots policy as a lever. And so looking for ways to be involved in grassroots level advocacy and organizing as a funder, and being able to really support that sustained policy advocacy at the local and national levels, and kind of striking that like tension between, which was mentioned also in the chat, I think that tension between the immediate need and the sort of, okay, strategically, how do we do both? How do we address these immediate needs for security? And then how do we actually prepare for and bolster for like what is really unknown in terms of, I just didn't want to miss that administration piece. And I think, a lot of groups are looking to see how they really can get involved in supporting those grassroots advocacy levels. So that's just another piece I would encourage funders to be paying attention and leaning into, looking to the movement groups on the ground who already are on the front lines of the advocacy work, and getting set up and prepared to protect community and to be there for, kind of what we're talking about, ensuring that the front lines of security, food security, community health security are provided for.
Thank you for addressing the administration part of that as well. Appreciate that. Okay, open up for other questions, either in the room or online. All right, well, I'm happy. I've got lots of great questions, so I'm happy to keep
Chuck,
going.
we do have some more online. I was
Okay.
just giving the room a chance.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, so online is, how can potential funders make themselves more accessible to the community so we can approach them versus being invited? We, the community, know what we need, but find accessing the philanthropy world a barrier.
I think I understand the question, which is this question is coming from a community group, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, now do you wanna, I feel like you're in best position.
Okay, I'll take it. I would say just getting involved. I would say connecting with your local agencies and getting involved in different groups, signing up for events, volunteering is definitely a big way to be able to segue into what you need for your organization. We host like a lot of events where we partner with other community partners. And in doing that, we have a lot of people that simply just come and volunteer. And some of those people that come and volunteer, they have their organizations and they're like, we're just looking for an opportunity to be able to serve throughout the year. And in doing so, you just never know who you might meet, you know, and be able to partner with just from simply attending an event just to help out. So I think that the biggest way to do that in the community is getting involved.
Yeah, and I also think I just want to tie this in because Ben asked a question earlier about like from the philanthropy perspective, like how can we reach out to the community? And this question is like kind of the opposite, where you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's this catch-22 where it's like, well, I'm waiting for you to reach out to me, or are you gonna? Should I reach out to you, or what? What's
What are
like,
we doing?
you know? And so it's just like starting this conversation and really like. I think that I know that philanthropy can be a little bit of a black box sometimes, and it's something that Newman's Own Foundation, we're really working to try and make that more transparent so that those funding mechanisms are clearer and the ability for conversation is more open. But really just not being afraid if you're a community group to reach out, because in general, philanthropy is looking for a way to connect with community. So don't be afraid to reach out and have those informal conversations. You know, not the first email doesn't have to be an application, you know?
Yeah. That's good.
Back to Natalie and the online questions.
Hey, how do you think about the balancing act of, excuse me, how do you think about balancing the tension of scale and efficiency versus community ownership?
So scale and efficiency versus community ownership.
Desiree, do you want to?
Sure. I love that question from Josh. You know, I think that we really have to look at these are things that are really at odds, you know, and sometimes I think that there's a real opportunity to look at both together. This is really what integrated capital presents the opportunity for. You know, I think there's a lot of really interesting models out there. Detroit Black Commons Food Sovereignty Network, DBC, FSN. They've done tremendous work over the last, it's almost 20 years, and they're still running on a lot of loan capital. So just put that out there. But where philanthropy's really kind of bolstered the work around some of the sovereignty, and this is multiple kind of interconnected entities that are working together. But it's an integrated approach in the community. And each of these entities have different ownership models, and the opportunity to really scale that is for other types of capital to come in there. And so I think that this is where we're at now. We're in a place where looking at integrated capital funding, philanthropy working together with community-owned funds and impact investors to really look at the opportunities to support alternative ownership models so that they can scale. And we see it, there's a great company, Firebrand Breads out of Oakland. There's a lot of these models of folks who are really leveraging integrated capital, alternative ownership models that are rooted in community ownership, and that are able to grow into 10, 20, $50 million businesses. That's a different conversation than venture capital. And we really need to be having that conversation, but we can build real wealth in community. So I think that the tension actually is the opportunity, and there's a lot of work happening and a lot of opportunities really for philanthropy to leverage PRIs, to leverage their DAFs, to leverage other parts of their portfolio to create and bolster different types of investment opportunities so that these models can scale.
Thank you for that. I think we've got time for one more question. So I'll look to Natalie if there's anybody on the chat. or anybody in the room who's, okay, Natalie, fire away.
Okay, last question. Elizabeth says, thank you to all panelists. I'm interested in how you balance the need for immediate support to communities and the need for longer-term systems change. Fixing today's broken food system for tomorrow is so important, but people still need to eat today. How can foundations better work together to address both those needs in tandem?
Well, I think for me, just providing meals to the kids every day after school and, in the summertime. And then in addition to that, working with local food banks and different resources in the area to make sure that I'm filtering that information and that accessibility through my communities so that they know that those resources are available to them, because it's just as important for me to be able to bring the meals into the communities as it is to bring in the resources that are available to that community outside of what I provide for them. So I think that, just making sure that we are opening them up to and connecting them with sustainable resources that they can utilize for their needs beyond what I provide is what I would say.
Yeah, I love that. I would just add that I would actually challenge like the paradigm of that question. So because a lot of times we talk about investing in community-based groups or investing in systems level change. And I would actually say investing in community-based groups is systems change. There's different levels of systems change, right? But that's really integral to changing and strengthening our food system. And so I think that I don't see that as an either or, I see that as a yes and. And I think that we can, and also that's the power of working around some of the federal programs we have been discussing here, where we can help communities leverage the programs that Mel works on, the programs we've been talking about today, WIC, SNAP, school meals, all of these programs that are already there and helping communities be part of that change.
Excellent. Is there anything you want to build there before I close this out?
I would just add to that to just, fuel innovation and share the risk. And then just that doubling down on building the partnerships for co-creation, be co-conspirators, not just funders, and really, be involved in the transformative community. And that ability to navigate and balance those two, I think is a shared tension then that everyone can hold together, and then it doesn't feel like it's just something that we're trying to tackle, and we find everyone else that we can co-conspire and align with.
Thank you. Gosh, I hope everyone will join me in thanking this panel, just all three of you, and how each of you built on each other's comments. And as I said earlier, just your commitment is contagious, and it's just it's an honor to be with you all. So thank you, thank you. As Corby said at the beginning, this panel and food justice conversation has been recorded, and there will be an opportunity to see that. You can visit it on the website at aspenfood.org. They're also looking out for, if you're on the email list, look out for an email notice to the direct link, which will have the recording for this panel discussion. And either stay on the newsletter or join the newsletter, because there'll be updates about future conversations on food justice, which we would love for you all to join us. So, and speaking of, thank you so much for joining us and for your interest in these issues. What's been, I think, very well clearly established is we need everybody in this work together and on the continuum that's being addressed to make sure that food justice philanthropy is as effective as we all want it to be. So thank you again to the panelists, and thanks to everybody who's been with us. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Chuck. Thanks.